Wednesday. I am your host for today, Stephanie Jones, and we are coming to you with an amazing session. We are honoring alopecia and breast cancer awareness months, and we have the amazing Alethea Brown, who is going to share, who's also going to pour into, and also going to help some get through difficult conversations around alopecia and breast cancer. So, Miss Alethea, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate Girls Night Live for having me on the first round for Unveiled Unlocked in this conversation. Thank you, Stephanie, for a warm welcome and for the team always for being on the level of excellence. So, hi, everyone. I am Alethea. I am the founder of Unveiled Unlocked. We celebrate and illuminate the hair-free community. Hair-free does not mean hairless. It means we don't identify with having or not having hair as our beauty, our identity, or our value. So you can have a head full of hair or no hair at all. So I'll start this as a conversation where I'm pointing the camera at myself right now, because some people will ask, how did you start this? Why did you start this? And then what is Unveiled Unlocked? So that gives some warm up for you to put your thoughts together too, because I really would like this to be a conversation, no different than if we were at a table having lunch and chatting. So Veiled Unlocked is a movement and an initiative that I started because of a response that I didn't like that I had to rejection. So how I started this was I was dating a gentleman and we were ripping and running and having all kinds of fun. I had a head full of locks still, but I wasn't quite taking care of them. And I had said to myself before my 50th birthday, instead of waiting until I'm 50, how about I cut the locks off and just do the hair free thing. I'd never really been one stuck on whether I had hair or not, because I've gone through every kind of transition of hair or no hair known to humankind. So what happened was he dumped me the night before my birthday because I shaved my head and he couldn't deal with it. What was more appalling for me was my reaction to him doing that, because I had never been one about hair. So I then started really tapping into this other thing called purpose. I'm an artist by trade. This is how I came on this planet. My mother's on this call, so she will tell that story that she knew from the age of 3. So I knew what my assignment was. What I needed to add to the assignment was another purpose. So I started thinking about how many women who have never had the experience of what it felt like to be hair free, with or without hair, and any kind of place they showed up in, the devastation that really starts repeating on itself. So I started asking those questions to men and women in the community of Harlem. Would you date a woman with no hair? Have you ever dated a woman with no hair? And it was interesting the responses that I started getting. So I started this platform 10 years ago in August. That is our anniversary. And we launched this on the stage at the YMCA stage in Harlem Week with 14 women, all different sizes and shapes, from 20 something to 60 something. And the people in the audience didn't know what to think or how to process us on that stage. And so one of the things that really started teaching me about what Unveiled Unlocked really was, because when you start something, you know how the creator is, he's got jokes all day long, and there will be you thinking you're doing something for what's in your head, and it's even bigger than you. So the day that we did that launch, there was a gentleman that came up to us at the end of the evening and said there was a chanting on us as far as the audience when we left the stage and we went to go back inside to the Kennedy Center to do a program, and they started chanting Barehead Beauty's encore. We didn't know that until he told us. The next day, I'm in a workshop at Riverside Church where I was doing a workshop with some children for VBS. One of the little boys who had been doing art with me at Abyssinia for a couple of years comes up to me, Miss Alethea, I saw you. And he looked up at the ceiling and corrected himself in midair. Instead of saying bald, he said, I saw you barehead ladies on the stage yesterday. You were beautiful. I'll never look at a barehead woman the same. And I just had to hold the tears back as my head went back. Because if that little boy at 8 or 9 got that message from that one presentation on that stage, I was on to something bigger than I even knew. So Unveiled Unlocked was really an initiative to sort of re-educate and re-language people. So when I say re-language, I really mean I put a new spin on the same language so that it has a positive connotation instead of a negative one. So I say bare is to bald, what nude is to naked. Mm. What does that mean? Well, when you think in terms of the art of nudity, it's supposed to be taken in as beauty and art and creativity, as opposed to something negative, which is referred to as something that's frowned on. So when I looked up in the dictionary the definition of bald, the definition was written, sick and not in control. I don't accept that. Let me lean in. I don't accept that. So I wanted another language that really defined, well, what happens whether you lose the hair or you choose to cut the hair, you still have to embrace it, right? So for me, embracing it was, I call myself by the name I want to be called, and you call me by the name I gave myself. So we bare our heads to the universe. We bare our heads to the universe. So all of these workshops and runways for causes and all of these things that we've done over the years were really initiatives to empower those in a silent war. So that brings me to the part about the why and the purpose. When I started coming out around people, I initially thought it was going to be those who I could clearly see having no hair or partially shaved heads. I can come up to that person and I know the things to say and how sensitive to be. What I could not see was those in a silent war. For instance, we were doing the African American Day Parade one year. And as we're walking the parade, we're chanting, barehead beauties right here. And we then chant, our choice, our voice. And this woman sitting in a wheelchair with her family on the sideline pulls her wig off and said, I'm a beauty, I'm a barehead beauty right here. And we ran over to her and just embraced her. And her family was like, because the daughter and the son, who were grown, said, in 20 years, we've never seen our mother's head, ever. We've never seen what was under that wig. She's never come out of her room in the house without her covered. And she's out in the street where there's cameras and people and strangers. Again, I'm on to something. When I can get those kinds of reactions, it's bigger than me. The last story I'll tell, because I really want you to think about what is your hair story as well. We were talking about doing a formal event. I had met with a senior VP at Marriott in Times Square. We went to see some of the ballrooms, and as we were finishing the walkthrough, woman with a perm, hair sweeping her shoulders, I'm not thinking twice about it. I'm just doing the matter of fact about what we are coming there to do. We go into the conference room with her, and she now says, as she makes it unofficial, what is Unveiled Unlocked? What are you guys doing? Because she heard the chitter chatter that we were having when we would walk into the different rooms to see what the space was and talking logistics. But now it piqued her interest on a personal level. So she wells up in tears when I started telling her the things we've done, the purpose we serve, and something about our mission. And she says, where were you 5 years ago when my mother was dying of cancer? I bit my lip and I leaned back in the chair. I get emotional whenever I talk about this because she said her mother literally died withering on the other side of the door, would not let anyone in, and she would not come out because she was ashamed of having no hair when she lost her hair to cancer. And I know if you guys existed, she would still be here. Do you see what I mean about this is bigger than me? And it still makes me real inside about how many people are suffering in silence. not the ones who already got it. Those we align with and empower with them to give a new direction to those who are in that silent war. So I say to you, in these 2 months, part of what I ask for Girls Night Live is to allow me to overlap. September is Alopecia Awareness Month. Awareness empowers you to relanguage how you're thinking. One of the other sisters on this call was one of the ladies that I recruited on a bus. And she has that story that she will tell. But the fact that there are people who will verbally assault someone because of how they show up is the reason we need to re-language and re-educate people. You never know what someone's going through. You just saw them show up, but you don't know the inside or the backstory to them. So, and for me, I'm taking a little different note on what awareness means because of the work I've been doing for these 10 years. I'm not just giving you the little glamour tips. I want to give you an internal tip because I often think like skin has 7 layers, beauty has 7 layers. There's emotional beauty, there's intellectual beauty, there's philosophical beauty, there's creative beauty. There's so many layers of beauty we never tap into. What would it look like if we start peeling those back? What would it look like if we began to really go deeper than skin on the surface? Because we really waste a lot of time. None of us are here without a purpose. And we have an expiration date. So what are we doing in the time that we have? So if I can shed a little light and have some of you share your hair stories as well. Let's have the awareness in the conversation as well, because sometimes if people know, they don't have a right to ask you why you don't have hair on your head. Because I'm noticing that's the other thing. People think that they have the right to ask you, well, why you don't have no hair on your head? Are you sick? Are you gay? Well, what does that have to do with anything? If I had, and I have had a head full of hair at the longest length, my locks were to my ankles. When I tell you, if I didn't take care of them and on a particular given moment, I wasn't coiffing them, no one ever said, your hair looks a hot mess today. Why is it looking like that? No one ever does that when you have hair. It's acceptable to not take care of it. But the moment you don't have hair, there's some notion in people's head, women, men, children. I've had an 8-year-old girl tell me that I was looking like a boy and that I needed to get on my knees and pray. This is in a bathroom. She comes out of a stall, looks at me up and down and says, are you a boy, a girl, or both? If you're 8 and you're talking like that, then who are you around? We need to re-educate about boundaries, and we have to really understand them. You don't have to know my story to accept that I walked in the room with no hair and showed up. But I give you this story now so that we can see ourselves in the mirror of truth. So for me, Unveiled Unlocked was a global initiative around illuminating the hair-free community and inserting ourselves in the beauty code. Because if you even look, we're now at that time of Fashion Week, and there's different notions of Fashion Week. There's Harlem Fashion Week now, the boroughs are now doing it. There's full figured, there's all these different fashions, but the hair-free woman is maybe one or two that's doing the runway. There's still this notion about hair is your glory and your crown. And I'm changing the game by saying your head is your crown because it holds your memories, your ideas, your thoughts, your experiences, your emotions. So say something to me in the chat. Are you here with hair or hair free? Where are you on the spectrum of beauty? And then what is your thought around when you see someone, whether you don't have hair or not, because you know what your journey is? What do you think when you see somebody show up in a room or a space that you're in that doesn't have hair? Hit me in the chat and tell me something you're thinking. And there's a notion also that there's something connected to your sexuality and your power. So is there someone chiming in now?
Yeah.
Faith.
I
Okay,
have,
Faith.
Hi, Alethea. How are you? It's
Hi, Faith.
been,
How are you?
it's been
Welcome.
it's been a long time since I've done a Zoom, okay? But
Awesome. That's okay.
yeah, so you won't see me, but you'll hear my voice. Yeah, I totally identify with what you were saying about people coming up with their own assumption on your hair loss, on
Hmm.
our hair loss, or on my hair loss. It's funny you should say that because today I went to Staples to get my passport picture taken because my passport is about to expire.
Hmm.
And the guy is looking at me uh, as I'm asking to have this picture done. And I purposely made up my face so that my mugshot would look so bad, you know, from a passport. And the first thing that comes out of his mouth is, "Oh, my mother has cancer. She's going through it. She just had her last treatment today." And I looked at him and I smiled. I said, "Well, I pray that she's well. She will survive. She'll be okay." I said, "But that's not my case. That's not my story." I says, "I have alopecia. And as I told you before, I'm always blowing up, unlock, unveil." And I told him, I said, I'm a follower of a group called Unlock Unveil, and we support women that are barehead, that are going through chemo, that are going through alopecia, that are going through lupus. I says there's a vast majority of reasons of why we have hair loss. I says, but just because we have hair loss doesn't mean we have to continue to suffer with the loss. And he goes,
Exactly.
That's very interesting." And I told him, I said, I wish your mother well, but yeah, people still assume that you're sick without knowing your true story.
Or that they're entitled to your story.
Exactly. Or
I
they,
say unapologetically, I show up. I don't have to apologize for why and how or
no,
that. If I had a
absolutely.
head full of hair and I had a leg amputated, you wouldn't ask me what happened.
Exactly. But they feel the need to either make innuendos or just come out blatantly and ask you, why are you bald?
Right.
I laugh.
Hmm. Well, you've gotten to that place, but tell me about a time when you weren't there yet. Tell me about a time that you can share because sometimes people see the end result, which I call it the glam shot, where you've already worked through those difficulties. But
Yeah.
before you got to that, how did you place yourself in the world?
For me, it was very emotional. I was afraid. Uh, I didn't want to, I didn't want to unveil. I wanted to still walk around as if I had hair. And it just got to a point where I couldn't do it anymore. And I had to accept the fact that my hair wasn't going to come back. I mean, just like the statement you made about the little girl coming out of the bathroom saying, "What are you, a boy or a girl?" I had a kid get on the elevator with me a year or two ago, and and her father was on the elevator with her, and she looked at me. She says, "You look like a man." And I looked at her and I says, "No, I'm not your dad and I'm not a man." I says, "I'm a girl just like you." And she debated with me and said,
Mhm.
"No, you're not." Now, this is a kid,
But the
right?
fact that the father didn't step in and do any corrective
The
feedback
father,
too,
the father didn't say anything except, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
because
I'm
that's what he
sorry."
teaches her in home.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, had it been a different day, maybe I wouldn't have been as nice as I was that day, but I had to also remember she's just a kid, you know?
And
So,
see that's why I say the relanguaging, because when people do things, and I'm often saying this even to myself, I'm preparing in my head the script for that moment when I have not necessarily a good or a bad day, but I'm just caught off guard, because
exactly.
everyone assumes that if you react or respond in a negative way, you're hostile, but they're not looking at how many times in the course of a day you're experiencing that, and they're not the first or last one that did that. They only
Exactly.
see that they are the only one in the room with you at that moment. So
Exactly.
I wanted people to see and hear this because maybe they can see themselves when they're out in the world. And you have family members that may have been going through something, which is why they're wearing their head covered, because they're not ready for enough that you're taking on the toll yourself of what you're having to walk in. The
Exactly.
other part is now you got to deal with your position and perspective on this, and then everyone else's too. Like you're carrying this world on your shoulders on two ends of the scale. And that's one of the
Exactly.
things too, even about women, that we're always subject to being on for everyone else and then having to monitor how we're responding and receiving that, as if there's not this human frailty with us. We should just keep having that bandwidth that's infinite. And sometimes
Exactly.
having these educational moments, it opens up another window for us to kind of breathe some air.
Mhm. And another thing that really got to me when I was still working is the owner of my company had been, you know, bald for maybe 2 years or a year after or what have you. And Halloween had come around, and she says to me, "Oh, Faith, so when are you going to let your hair grow back? Is this just a fad?"
Mm.
And I looked at her and said, "No, it isn't just a fad." I said, "Unfortunately, my hair is not growing back, and I'm never going to cover it up." Now, this is what I had to deal with in the workplace. Eventually, they got used to it, but every now and then I would get hit with an innuendo, about bearing my head.
Well, see, this is the thing. I remembered about 4 or 5 years ago, a guy I was dating asked me, this really looks good on you, but are you ever gonna grow it back? Do I ever get to see what you with hair looks like? And my head went like this, because that's when I don't want to say what I'm thinking, because I can't undo what's gonna come out of this. Because
Exactly.
you know what? I find that people are insensitive, and their expectation is that you're more evolved because you're already living in this and walking in.
Exactly. 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 I had a similar experience like that as well. Dating with a bald head, let me just say this. Dating with the bald head was
That's
not
a
easy
whole
either.
nother subject.
Yes, that's a part two. But I'm going to
Uh-huh.
just share this incident. I was dating a guy, and of course I'm bald, and he says to me, "Well, can't you wear a Caesar?" I'm
Mm.
like, no, I can't wear a Caesar." He says, "Well, can't you just let it grow back a little bit more?" I says, "No, I just can't grow it back a little more." I said, "Look, let me tell you." I said, "My hair is never gonna come back." I said, "This is what it is." And I said, "This is who I am. So you have to accept me for who I am." Well, eventually that relationship ended
And
because he thought
that's
that
the
I was
truth.
playing.
Well, no,
Yeah.
he wasn't ready for his own thoughts. How about that?
No,
He wasn't
no.
ready for his own position about an aesthetic that he was uncomfortable with. And this is often what I say. When I first started this, I met this filmmaker and white woman with no hair, and she had informed me of a study that had been done on some stats about relationships, speaking of what it's like to be dating someone without hair. The stat was 75% of women who were in a marital relationship who had hair and lost their hair while during the marriage occurring, lost their
Mhm.
marriage because of their hair loss. What I found when that stat came up was more of those women, I'd say 60 or 70% of that 75, were actually more Caucasian women.
Yeah,
More of the Black women weren't having the same issue if they were already in the committed relationship, because Black women have done so many things with their head, and sometimes their men found that it was more sensual because they can touch their head as opposed to having all these hairdos they couldn't touch. So there were different
exactly.
dynamics that went on with that scenario. But what is astounding is the idea of there are different stages. You just mentioned what it's like in the workplace, what it's like in the
Yes,
dating world, what it's like around children. That's three scenarios right there that you, in the
absolutely.
course of a day, can
Yes,
actually have an experience with. So I'm going to
exactly.
shift you a little bit, because now I want to ask some other folks on there, where's your spirituality when it comes down to how you accept yourself? What's your go-to for self-loving? What is the thing that you do, say, or practice that really re-centers you about your self-love and your self-acceptance?
I tell myself I am beautiful, I am valuable, I am worthy, and I love me. I love me more than anybody else. And I accept me for who I am, what I am, and where I am right now. And of course, meditation and prayer.
How long did it take you to get to that place you're in
Whew,
right now?
Lord have
That's
mercy.
not an overnight thing.
No, no, it's not. It took me a long time. I say I really came full circle with that maybe 2015,
Mm-hmm.
2016. And I've been bald for 13 years. I shaved off my head in 2009.
Okay.
Okay. So I've just, along the way on this hair loss journey, I've just accepted me for who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It is an option to wear a wig, but I choose not to wear a wig.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
just for me.
Right.
And I realized, from our conversations we've had in the past, I was born bald.
How about
Maybe it was
that?
just,
How
maybe it was
about
just,
that?
maybe it was
It,
just destined. Maybe it was just destined for me to be bald, but
one way or the other.
the weird part is the boys still have all their hair, but the girls, my other two sisters, their hair is thinning.
Mm,
It's both due to medications that
mm.
they're taking. See, there's different circumstances for
Yes.
people having hair loss,
Yes.
be it men, women, or children. You
Yes.
know, mine is from, you know, a little bit of everything: over processing hair,
Mm-hmm.
nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
stress.
Stress.
It
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
that's a major thing. That's a major thing. Stress, what it does to the
Stress.
body.
And
Yes.
that's why I said, what is the go-to? Because
Mhm.
I'm gonna ask someone else, when you
Go
think
ahead.
about stress,
Mhm.
what
I'm
are
gonna come
some
off.
of the thank you for your sharing. When you think about stress, what are some of the things that you guys do about stress melting or stress relief? Do you take in meditation, prayer? Do you take a walk? Do you redecorate your home? What are some of the things that you do to stress melt and to recenter yourselves? I want to hear from you guys as well. Anybody want to share? What's your stress melt, your stress relief? Yes, Mama D.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody.
Welcome, welcome.
Um, it's funny because I was writing down everything that hurt me,
Mm,
every disappointment, how I felt ugly,
mm,
hurt, every pain that I was going through. I was writing down. One of my foster kids picked up my book and she was like, "Ma, this is poetry. This is so beautiful."
mm,
I was like, "Girl, what are you talking about?
mm-hmm,
That's my personal stuff. Why are you reading my book?" She said, "Well, it was just laying there and said composition. I thought it was one, school book or something. I just picked it up and opened it." But I didn't even know I was writing poetry. She told me I was writing poetry. I didn't know nothing about poetry, didn't know no poets, didn't know nothing. I was just,
mm.
and that's how that was my stress. That was my therapy.
What amount of time were you doing this writing?
5 years.
5 years before you actually did anything in front of a mic in a room full of people?
Years. I covered my head. I had every kind of hat, every kind of gele, every kind of scarf you could think of. I went to work every day. People was like, "Why you don't take your hat off?" I said, "Why you don't mind your business? It's my head." I was just rude. I was just
No, that
5
was
years.
just snapback because it becomes overwhelming. And sometimes when we resist, we also have to recenter ourselves, because the other part of this is you can't keep getting angry every day, because
Every
it takes
day.
a toll on your body, and it becomes now self-inflicted as opposed to what others are casting. That's why I want to shift to a little bit too in this conversation. I know we will never have enough hours in the day to have this conversation, because there's so many other parts to it. And Faith mentioned about sometimes the option is to wear a hair, hat, or wig. I see Noreen on this call as well. She is sort of my yin and yang in this journey about hair to hair free. When I say hair to hair free, I'm talking about for those who want to use a hair hat as an accessory or an option situation, that she hand makes them, because of sometimes your scalp is too sensitive to wear something abrasive. Sometimes the way they're structured doesn't fit your cultural identity. Because that's the other thing too. I remember, and I know what my mother's reaction is going to be because I see her on this call. I remember once upon a time when you, as a brown person, had only two options for a pair of pantyhose. Women, do you understand what I'm saying? Hit me up in that chat. When you were brown, it doesn't matter from the lightest to the darkest brown, it was taupe and suntan. There was no shade of brown that spoke to you. So you walked outside looking like you were gray and muted, like some paint was slapped on your leg, because there was no pantyhose that spoke to your cultural identity. So this is important for us to understand that we need engineers on deck to be creating things that speak to the spectrum of who exists. There are men, there are women, there are light, there are dark, there are brown, there are tan. There's all these different spectrums of people on the sea of this planet. And we sometimes get jaded because of all these isms that block us from being able to have that. So Noreen, because of a friend, and she actually cut her hair off because of a friend of hers. I don't know if she's still on the call, but she had us. Okay, Noreen, share with us your journey with making the wigs, and also with one of your friends that lost her hair to a health issue.
Well, one of my closest friends that was a best friend and sister, she was Pam Greer's twin. Looked exactly like Pam Grier, shape, everything. And she's the first person personally that I knew that had cancer. On top of it, she locked me into confidentiality that I was the only person, nobody in her family, I was the only one that knew. And I remember she came to the house and she was upset because she had on this wig that didn't do anything for her. And I was like, Bobo, she was Benita, so we called her Bobo. I'm Noreen. No. I was like, Bobo, you need to take that wig off because you're too pretty. She's like, no, you just don't understand how people are saying things to me. I was like, you're drop dead gorgeous. Are you crazy? I said, okay, if that's the case, let's go. And we went in the bathroom. She said, what are you doing? I said, then they're going to talk about both of us, because I'm cutting my hair to be there with you and support you. A lot of people don't know that. I never thought about it. It never gave me a second thought. I loved her so much that it was like, do or die, I'm going down with you. Okay. So if they're going to talk about you, they're talking about me too. And so just coming along with hair and being a natural hair person and helping people grow their hair and the relationship and being comfortable with it. A lot of times when people start losing their hair and it starts going crazy, it's all the stress about losing it that helps to take it out even faster or thin it out, and then again with medications, just with the environment, lifestyle, men are in a whole different category. They'll just scalp you. Okay. But aside from that, it just touched me to my heart. And I felt, listen, I've been doing natural hair. I know how to crochet. When I listened to my ex-clients saying regular wigs abscess, irritated them, gave them a rash, it was too hot. I just started thinking, there's some way I can make a difference. Let's try this. And that's really how this all started, to really help a lot of ex-clients and friends of mine, clients who now were suffering with chemo, radiation. I have quite a few friends that have had lupus, and I've dragged them and like cut out the inside of the wigs before I started this. But I would always try to make it, put felt on the inside so that it would make it more comfortable, because in corporate America, they had to represent.
And then now that's another chapter. Like I said, you have children, you have dating, you have how people receive you in the workplace. There's all these chapters of what a person, male or female, goes through having this journey. Now I'm going to tell you another stat, because I love the fact that we can share our emotional journey, but there are stats on this that's real, y'all. This gentleman, I had an exhibit. I'm an artist, like I said, and I had a show where one of my paintings was up, and on this large burlap piece, it's a woman in a red dress with no hair and 3 men playing instruments behind her like they're serenading her. Older white gentleman wearing a biking helmet, and he had a toupee on, and I can instantly tell from where the back of the hair was not sitting flat. So he says to me, you just made it okay to not have hair and to take this toupee off. So he starts telling me the story that for 20 years, everyone that knows him has only seen him with this toupee on his head. Then he said, but it's becoming more and more difficult to keep it on because I like to bike, I like to swim. Sometimes it falls off under the water and I got to go by the drain and grab it because it gets sucked into the drain. And he said, and it's too much. So you just made it okay for me to take this off. When I started doing a study on that, 6,000 men per month buy toupees. The only reason that number is not higher is because a larger number who are affluential men who have money and power and position don't put their name and address on the packages that are being mailed to them because they have an assistant, a wife or relative or someone else that places the order for them, so their name never gets registered in the system. So men have hair stories and issues too. And what I find is that sometimes even we as women, and I'm not saying anyone in particular, will also discriminate and think, oh, well, you could just shave it off. There's an emotional connection that I'm also saying we all need to become more sensitive and real about. If you have a story, isn't someone else's story valid too? If you have an issue, isn't someone else's issue theirs too? You can't define what someone else is going through based on looking on the outside in. So this awareness month, when I started looking at, well, May is lupus awareness month, October is breast cancer awareness month, September is alopecia awareness month. When I started thinking about what is this thing about awareness, May is Mother's Day, June is Father's Day, then it started striking a chord in my head. You have all these awarenesses because people have an unknowing about how to celebrate, appreciate, and really embrace all the contributions that that human being has and brings. So now you have to create a celebration and an acknowledgement and an awareness so that people can really come to a center about being more humane, about recognizing that body of people that exist that are often invisible. Mothers, Mother's Day. Fathers, Father's Day, right? There's always a cause and a reason why we illuminate a particular calendar date, because of something that there's a void in. So if I had to share with you too, one of the tidbits, I'm gonna take a shameless commercial moment to say this about what I'm actually looking to do. And I'm hoping that someone who's listening to this that may not have come on the camera or hasn't really felt comfortable speaking out about it can really embrace what I'm going to share. So October 7th through the 10th, I will be doing a 4-day virtual conference honoring our crown. Finding New Direction is our anniversary, our 10th anniversary lineup celebration name. And so for those 4 days, We have a lineup of presenters, both men and women. The presentation is going to be for men and women. There will be a plethora of topics on each of the days, and we'll be journaling things. So I'm going to ask for you to look at the chat that's here, and Girls Night Live will also share after this taping is over, so that you can get the information from what we're listing. If you go to Unveiled Unlocked on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or you go to my email, which is also in the chat, unveiledunlocked@gmail.com. Our 4-day virtual conference is on every platform that I just named. We are on. If you just Google Unveiled Unlocked, you will see us pop up on many things. And I really wanted this 4-day to be not so rammed in, where some people ask, well, why isn't it just 2 days? Because to really get into the depth of things, you need some breathable space, and it could be daunting and overwhelming to pack everything into a small container. I used to give these artist development workshops, and the first one I did was a 1 day, and everybody was like, Alethea, this is too much information. My head is exploding. So when I spread things out, it's really with a purpose, so that we can really take a deep breath, share what we have to share, get some tidbits of information, and walk away with some things like tools give you the ability to really live on a different layer of quality. And so for me, I wanted for you guys to experience some of the presenters, also engage in some of the activities. We have on day 1, Brenda Brunson Bay. She is an iconic designer, 5 decades adorning women's bodies with her beautiful, elegant, wearable art. We have day 2, Noreen, who was just talking about how she shaved her head off. She's the Nuna collection with quirky hats and wigs. We have Larry from Levels Barbershop in Harlem. His wife, he shaves her head, and she sometimes goes in and out of hair and no hair. So this is a barber that's friendly to both the feminine and masculine haircut. Day 3, I'm doing some of the coloring pages from my coloring book, and we get to stress melt and hold conversations. And the body mechanic is going to be sharing some benefits of water. How many people drink water and drink it in the proper amount that your body really should per day? Most of us don't, right? And if you're over 50, I bet you probably don't, right, Mom? Uh-huh. So there are a number of us that need a re-education about water and a relationship with it, because we don't use it like it's medicine. I was watching a video earlier about aloe vera, and how if you get a cut, you can rub it on your skin, or you swish it in your mouth, and it cleanses your gums and your tongue, and it does also so many fantastic things to the inside of your body, and gets rid of that belly gut, and does so many things. So during these 4 days, I get to share some tea talk about a tea each day that does something beneficial. You get to journal. We get to have all these interactives. So the virtual conference is a federal holiday weekend. So I did it so that people primarily would be off. So definitely it's on the chat, and you can follow us. So I wanted to get into the hair to hair free. I often am saying, we are not segregating ourselves as just those who have no hair and those who have a journey of pain. We insert ourselves on the whole spectrum, because we have often been considered invisible, from hair to hair free. Someone here with hair want to share their hair story. Please definitely open your mic and share where you are on your journey, with some of the layers of beauty that really go on with that as well, because that's something we can all relate to. There's always a story that we have on this journey. Anyone here who has hair who wants to share a hair story? Okay, so in moving along, if it comes to you, if you're compelled, then definitely chime in, and we'll acknowledge you. One of the things that I like to share about wellness is it's a lifestyle journey. It's not a 1-2, one and done. You definitely have to embrace it as you go. So my, for instance, is on the conference, if I'm telling you about olive leaf extract, olive leaf tea. It comes in a loose tea, and I buy it from Harney and Sons. That's one of the few companies that I actually found makes the loose tea of it. It's very tasty, but medicinally, it's beneficial, improving memory for those Alzheimer's, dementia, stress, fatigue. It's an immune booster, it's a cleanser, and it does so many things to lift you. I'll tell you my story. I had bought the tea, but I was taking the capsules off and on right before the pandemic hit. And I decided to try the tea because I like teas in my morning before I start my day. And I'm walking from the living room to the kitchen, and it was like somebody flipped a switch and all this clarity just said, woof. And I said, ooh, just that quick from the tea? I could see how sometimes being overwhelmed with how much I'm doing, or not getting enough sleep, or not drinking enough water, or all the plethora of things that overwhelm us when we're those kinds of people. And all of a sudden, I started seeing the benefit what that tea did for my brain. And I tell you why I'm super sensitive about it too, is because both of my grandparents, my grandmother on my mother's side and my grandmother on my father's side, had Alzheimer's. And I've always been sensitive about foods because I had food allergies as a child. So coming into these teas and seeing that there were things to improve that, I began to be fascinated with foods that benefit the brain. And there are specific foods that actually improve that. So if you do that early enough on, there are preventative things. Because I look at the age that I'm now, pushing 60. Shameless. Um, but I look at the things that aren't happening with me that I could see when I watched all those in my family tree when they were 50 and 60 that I'm not experiencing. I never had fibroids. And I've seen that happen on both sides of my family. So it's definitely, you can break the cycle of how your body is in attack if you start doing things preventative early enough and be consistent with it. I was in Philly last weekend for an art thing I had, and also to meet Girls Night live in person. And I said, don't make excuses just because you're not at home. I bought a aloe leaf and took it with me in my ice pack and my lime. And I still got up every morning while I was in Philly visiting my friend. And I still did my morning fast with my aloe, my lime, and my water. So we can so easily get caught up in, well, I can't do it today because. Well, this is where I came across a friend that left a book in my house, and I went to pick it up off the desk, and lo and behold, it falls on the floor. I pick it up, and the page that opens, the first line I read, what would your life look like if the word excuse was not in your vocabulary? I'm gonna turn and look away. What would your life look like if excuses were not in your vocabulary? Because I know the excuses that I make, the lies I tell myself, why I don't get to something, why I can't keep up with something, why. So in this honoring our crown, what I'm looking at is we have to honor taking care of ourselves, because self-care is wellness. The quality of living that you have while you're here, is it on a scale of 1 to 10, if you had to give yourself a report card, what would your report card look like for you? Are you taking care of yourself, or are you at the bottom of the totem pole? Are you looking at when you're under crisis in a stressful situation, how you're going to come out of it or combat that? Honor your crown, because you hold thoughts and memories. And I'll tell you this also, Tibet, which is kind of what I do also in general. When we did this past summer for the anniversary for Unveiled Unlocked, we did a dinner, we did some stage performances at Harlem Week. And with all the things that we was doing, it can be stressful preparing for something, even if it's a grand thing that you're doing. So Body Mechanic is a fitness guru, a wellness gentleman, and he uses indigenous instruments to sound melt the stress. So we took a trip up to Peekskill Waterfront, September 9th, after all was said and done with our celebrations, and we laid on our mats and we did some stress melting as he blew his didgeridoo and played the gong and the healing sound bowls at the water as the sun went down. It was amazing. It was amazing. It was amazing. And that was so needed after coming down from all the things we do, we did, we belong to. Even if you're going to help other people, you can't help them at the optimum level if you are not taken care of. Who am I pointing at? Me. If I point at you, don't take care of me, I can't be that good for you. So you got to be selfless, not selfish, when you do that taking care of. And I see so many women not doing that. So honor the crown that holds your memories, your thoughts, your ideas, your emotions. Your heart holds the soul, your brain holds the mind. And you can't be any good in those two spaces that you hold so near and dear as loving beings if you're not taking care of it. So even today, I didn't answer any phone calls. I didn't pick up the phone and make any phone calls. I monitored what I was doing in every moment leading up to getting on here with you so that I could be fully present. You see what I mean? Give me a feedback. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Share something with me right now. Anyone have anything to say? Miss Brown, I know you always have something to say. Yes. Your audio is not working? Okay. Well, we have about 10 more minutes on this call. I wanted to also just share with you, Veiled Unlocked, again, I wanted to move in a new direction when I started adding that second half to the name, honoring our crown, finding new directions. The finding new directions, when you think of this symbol of the Sankofa, looking at your past so you can see where you're heading in the future, I wanted to put some more emphasis on the male energy that we often have had in our midst, and we only really had them in support of us, but they have a journey that we've been doing male talks with. And it's really an awakening for women to be silent and just listen to the men in their conversations with each other. Ms. Brown, are you getting your audio together for us? Still not working? Okay. So we've been moving in that additional new direction. But the other thing is, I'm moving away from doing so many of the runways because I'm seeing that people looked at us more about modeling and fashion, which is an important part. Beauty definitely shows up, and we needed our presence to make an unveiled position. But I also wanted to state, when we have these kind of workshops and talks and do interactive things where there's this human touch, because that's where we really start doing the healing work, when we physically get around each other and start sharing those dynamics and start unveiling and opening the dialogue and finding that there's so many things about all of us that have a common place and can identify with, I do that, or, oh, I know what that's like, or maybe you could do this way. And it starts germinating all these other wellnesses. So for me, Unveiled Unlocked wasn't just about hair. And Faith said it to me about a few weeks ago, which I love it when someone else says for you what your intentions are without you having to say it, because then that means you did your job. This is so much more Unveiled Unlocked than about not having hair or talking about that, because we tap into wellness on other levels. What kind of things you're eating, what kind of time you're spending, what kind of things you're doing, the camaraderie of other people who look like you and have been on a journey, maybe different or similar. There's so many other things when I look at whole living that really resonates for me, that what I liked about holistic is that it deals with whole living. It is not just targeting one area and pouncing on that, which is why I didn't want Unveiled Unlocked to be just about women. We coexist on the planet with men. And if we are having dysfunctional relationships with them, how do we repair that damage if we don't include them into our infrastructure and in our frame? So for me, it's about finding balance and a center. And it's not perfect, but so is so many other areas of our lives that we've embraced in some dysfunctional way. So in a functional way, the imperfections I wanted to include is that we coexist. And for those who may have a partner that doesn't understand you're not having hair, for those who have a partner that may be losing a hair, when we did the first installment of Unveiled Unlocked at that Harlem Week, there was a gentleman that called me. He couldn't attend, but he was newly dating a woman that he had met on the job, and he didn't know until the day he was picking her up for a date that she was hiding behind wigs and scarves and all because she thought a delivery was coming and he got there early. When she opened the door, she had mud on her face for her mask and no hair, and she went running to her bedroom, shocked that it was him and not the delivery man. And he says to me over the phone, I want you to talk to her because she's more beautiful without the hair. I was wondering what was going on, and I was having to adjust myself to really perhaps having to date a woman with all these weaves and wigs and all of that. He was like, I was quite relieved to see that, oh, I actually like her even more without the hair. And she couldn't embrace it. She wasn't there yet. And he said, I thought if she saw the pictures that you guys present, she could see there's others out there that look like her and find her way. And so every time I wanted to quit and throw the towel in and just focus on my art, something like that happens. Something like that centers me back, like, you said you wanted something with a purpose. Do you bail when it gets hard, a little hard, a little difficult, or do you stay the course? Because, like I said, the spirituality part is I was sent here with a purpose on an assignment for a reason. And so I'm in a surrender because this has gotten to be way beyond me. So when I look at the spectrum of this journey, I'm gonna show you something that I thought was kind of cool. Can you see this? We are here now, right? This is, I don't know if you can see it with the light. Okay, maybe like that. So they have now a barehead Barbie doll, right? So we are in a time and place where the sensitivities around that we exist is showing up in mainstream culture, right? So that you even have a doll that represents a young woman to a young girl. I remember, and this again, I could see where my mother's gonna kind of show up on the screen. She went unapologetically out of her way when I was a child to get a Dancerina doll in black because she wanted me to identify even in play with my brownness unapologetically. So there is something about self-preservation and being able to connect to your inner being and not apologize for it. So whether it be being brown, being without hair, being with hair, what would it look like if you embraced where you are, that you are, period. Period. So as we are coming down to the last couple of minutes, I definitely want to say thank you to Girls Night Live for having me on this platform. I had a wonderful conversation at the meet and greet last weekend up in Pennsylvania with Shelly Fisher, and she really made me think about the what and why of Unveiled Unlocked when we were talking. And when she asked me, no, like, really, what started you? What got you here? So one of the things that I said there is, I, at 5 years old, saw a woman in my community in East Harlem, stepped off the curb with mom. This woman was blue black with no hair. And I was thinking in my 5-year-old mind, if I live to be 50, I want to cut all the hair off my head and touch that kind of beauty. And so it was already in there that was beauty. But then the other added layer was when I cut it and saw how life could take other turns, and it just shifted me again. So sometimes, like Faith said earlier, she was born bald, and now look at where you are. Sometimes there are little pebbles along this road that you're on this journey with that you step over, and then that boulder stops you on that pathway and goes, no, no, now you have to really see me and confront the me that was always meant to be. So I want to thank you. We are at 8 o'clock, and I want to be timely. And I want to say thank you to all of you for coming out, and for Stephanie and the Girls Night Live that's always so warm and friendly to me. Don't forget Unveiled Unlocked and our 4-day conference, and to be continued.
Yes, Alethea, that was amazing. Thank you so much for your time and for also opening the floor to transparency as well as understanding, and allowing people to think outside of maybe the box that we've been in individually. Again, can you announce the conference, the 4-day conference? How can
Yes.
people get in touch with you again for that?
So the 4-day conference, unveiledunlocked@gmail.com, is my direct email, because I wanted to have more of a personal touch than you just clicking a link to something. Because if you want to pay it in installments, if you want to pay it in all at once, if you want some more details about it, you can email me. That goes directly to my phone, so I get to respond. I'm an insomniac, so I really don't sleep. Doesn't matter what time you call. So, and I wanted people to really embrace each of the 4 days. So we have men and women presenters. We have a lineup that you will see on our Instagram and Facebook. You'll see more actively each day that I'll put add-ons of things that we're sharing with you about it. I'm also going to be raffling one of my pieces of art on the 4th day of it. I will be sending a package out to people, so you will get an Unveiled Unlocked notebook with a pen, and you'll get the pages from the coloring book and some colored pencils. So it's going to be interactive. So each day there's different things lined up for you to be engaged. And if you miss a day, you can get the recording so that you can watch it on your own accord. So
Okay.
I think of everything.
Great. Sounds great. And it sounds like it's going to be a wonderful conference. So best wishes to you, as well as Unveiled Unlocked in your mission. On behalf of Girls Night Live, thank you everyone for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you soon and very soon. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. To be continued.
Thank you.